looking to summon Omus, the god of chaos.
Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming, and welcome to another Snap Judgment review. What is a Snap Judgment review, you ask? Well, I think in modern day gaming and modern day video game reviews, many of the people who review it kind of overlook problems right off the bat because they actually push themselves to review a game 100% or all the way through. I don't. 5 to 10 hours max with the original game. I'm trying to give you an idea whether you're going to enjoy this game right off the bat or not. That, coupled with the fact that I think video games are one of the most subjective forms of art, I'm not going to give a score to this review. Instead, I'm going to give you a list of pros and cons, in my point of view, as all reviews are. I'm going to tell you what the game is as an overview, and I'm going to tell you whether I personally will be sticking with this game outside the purposes of this review or not. So the game today I'm super excited for. It is For the King 2, and I'm excited for this because this was one that kind of took me by surprise with For the King. Back when it was first put into Game Pass on I think it was still playing console at the time, and I just tried it on a whim, and I really liked the game. I actually think there's a review of it on this channel in the horrible reviews section, and it just really, I really liked it. So I've actually heard about For the King 2. I was really excited for it. It's on my wish list, and it has just recently came out this last week. But is it good? Is it bad? Let's talk about it. Well, what is For the King? To start, For the King is procedurally generated, almost roguelike board game experience that is kind of trying to capture the magic of like tabletop role-playing game is what it is. You take on the if you're solo, you take on four characters that you can name and custom. The graphics are very simple in this one, but you could take on these 4 character classes that you get to name and customize. And these characters there's a wide swath of characters already in the game, and a bunch that you can unlock, I am sure, by getting them later. I haven't gotten a chance to play with anything other than the original ones. You can name these characters, customize them, whatever. If you're playing multiplayer, players will actually take control of just one of those characters and try and work together through what a kind of like, I want to say like 5 to 9 hour mission. The overall campaign is 30 hours. The original For the King was only about 9 hours in the original one, and you played through once on the board and then you kind of replayed it. They wanted to make this a bigger campaign but cut it in half so that there's bigger there's big biomes and you can kind of take new characters in every time. I think this is a really good decision on a whole. Not worth putting into the pros column, but just a good decision for replayability and whatnot. I never made it through the first one, just to give you guys a heads up. I am just over 5 hours and just haven't. I'm on my 3rd run. Now I'm starting to kind of feel what the game is. You'll take turns moving around this hexed board that's procedurally generated each time. The story will be the same. The plot will be the same for the main stuff, but everything that shows up on that map are going to show up in different ways. They're going to show in different things. Different items are going to show up, and there's tons of different things. You can get temples where your character prays to a god and gets divine favor. There's places to heal, places to find items. After each battle, you'll loot the bad guys and gain some experience points. What's really interesting about this is there is a dynamic here where the game itself is constantly rushing you towards an objective, usually even with a time limit. This objective is something. In the first mission, it'll be you have to get into a guardhouse to rescue somebody, then you find out they're not there, then you have to go rescue them, and blah blah blah. You're trying to kind of build a resistance as part of the main campaign. What's interesting here is while it's constantly pushing you towards that, you have to decide when you're leveled up and how fast you're moving through it, because if you move through it too fast, your characters won't have enough equipment or enough loot or enough experience to deal with the bad guys as the game kind of grows in difficulty as you go along. The games themselves have exact difficulty modifiers, not even just in like how difficult it is, but you can turn up how often things happen, how fast days, like it's very in-depth, and I appreciated that. Days will pass as you go. There's a day and night cycle here, which is really cool. As each person takes a turn and moves from hex to hex, the rounds will actually continue. Also, you'll eventually get these kind of thresholds, whereas if you take too much time, chaos builds, or there's in one of the missions that I was in, there's this mechanic where every so often you're going to be attacked by these really big foes, and you have to be prepared for that. Chaos just increases the levels of your enemies out in the world, and bad guys and threats to you. And yeah, it's really the gameplay. That's the gameplay in a nutshell. Get through the mission, and then as you're doing that, you collect these things called books of lore for doing like objectives in the game, completing things for the first time, and you use those books of lore to increase your chances. You can increase loadouts, you can buy new character classes once you've unlocked the ability to, all sorts of new things that you can get in the lore store between matches. So yeah, that's the game. It's the game in a nutshell. You have so many lives, which allow you to revive your companions when they're down, and then once they're done, you're dead, period. So let's get into the pros and cons of this one. Alright, so I like to go positive first at all times, and so we're going to start with the pros. My first pro is the quick combat. So I'm not usually a fan of turn-based combat. This is very reminiscent of your like old school JRPG sort of feel to it, where every character is put onto an initiative tree, and then when it's their turn, they can make an attack. I will say, unlike the first one, they have added this grid-based, this 8 grid-based kind of positioning map when you're in a fight, which allows your character to move behind other characters and gain guard from them, or position themselves away from other people. There's not a huge amount of strategy that it adds to it, but it does add some strategy to it. Like you can use knockback attacks to push melee characters into the back row so that they can't attack you, stuff like that, which I appreciated. I appreciated that change, though on a whole I would say this works very similar to the original game. But the combat itself is snappy and quick. It's fun, it gets to the point. I'm not usually a fan of combat like this, but there's enough strategy to get me, because it just feels like trading punches. This doesn't as much. There definitely feels like a management of hit points and where I'm aiming and how I'm doing it, especially when you get into the later dungeon areas, which are these big multi-level things that you have to kind of punch through or die trying. And yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed the combat being fast and snappy, and this game is just savable at any time. So you guys, anybody who's been watching this for a long time, know that these Snap Judgment reviews always get points for, because one of the reasons I do these things are for dads and people who do not have time to drop 8 or 9 hours into a game. Maybe they get an hour, maybe they get 2 free, after their kid's asleep, or before their wife gets home, or something along those lines, to play. And like, there's so many games out there, like Cyberpunk, half the cutscenes are that long. You can't get into anything. This gets points for it because you could really jump in, make a couple of moves, and jump out. I would actually say that this is almost playable. I can't remember what it's called, asynchronized, something like that. Which is really interesting and cool. I think it's nice, it's quick, it's simple, and it's fun. I love the management of the loot. The loot stuff, well, let's go into the next pro, and that is the loot and the equipment system. It did take me a little while to figure it out, which we'll talk about in the cons, but you can buy stuff for everybody, and you can equip stuff, you can hand stuff back and forth as long as you're close enough on the hex map to do so. And I think that the equipment stuff is really fun. It's really, every time I got a piece of equipment, it was really interesting, and I had to really think about whether or not I wanted to put it on something and replace something I already had. They all feel very unique, very different, especially the weapons. Every character, I think it's something like 6 or 7 stats, and every one of those stats has a bearing on combat. But they're dependent on the weapon you have. So, like, if you are a big barbarian and you try to use a magic wand, well, a magic wand is a brain weapon, whereas the barbarian has got low brain, so he doesn't use it. That's kind of how they flex it out, which is one thing I really enjoy. It gives you a versatility. So like the blacksmith is really great at toughness. So there's toughness weapons, toughness shields, that sort of thing, which are usually include hammers and whatnot. But they're also pretty good at strength, so you can set them up with a strength weapon. It really allows for some interesting build mechanics in-game. Take for the Hunter. The Hunter was one of the most versatile ones I had played with, which you're actually probably seeing on the screen. But at first I had him with a bow, and then I found, which is a perception weapon. But I found glaives are actually perception weapons as well, but they're large and do big damage. So all of a sudden I could build out my Hunter to be a much more accomplished fighter, which just made things really interesting and just opened up a lot of doors as far as how you play the game in it. The equipment is really cool so far. There's a lot of it. There's more of it than I expected, and there's a lot of good thought process put into it. My next pro is the followers. They've added a follower system to this game where you can actually hire mercenaries at town, and they become another computer-controlled character to fight with you, and they're usually pretty powerful. I thought this was really cool. The only thing I didn't like about it was that there's no option to extend the contract. Once the contract comes to an end, they're just gone, and you have to return all the way back to the city that they base out of. Whereas I would love it if 6 turns came to an end and they're like, hey, pay another 100 gold and I'll stay with you. I thought that would have been cooler. That being said, the follower system itself is really cool, not to mention the fact that followers all have their own backstories, which is even cooler as well. This game really promotes that tabletop RPG feel, and if you get 4 good RPers to get into the multiplayer in this, you could actually just use this as a game master if you wanted. The only thing that I have a problem with, well, the only thing I will say is I never got a chance to try the multiplayer, so all of the stuff in this review is coming from the standpoint that I only played single player. And then my final pro that I really enjoy is the ragdoll effects. This is a nice little ad they did in this. Whenever a bad guy dies on screen, they just go limp in ragdoll. It is incredibly fun to watch, and it just makes the battle feel kind of cooler. I don't know. There's just something about it that I enjoyed. Arrows will stick in the opponents. They don't just vanish with the hit point allotment. And it just made the battles, because turn-based can often feel very unreal, and it made the battles feel a little bit more real, and I appreciated that level of immersion. So let's move on to the cons. Okay, number one con for me in this game, without a doubt, is lack of info in general when you first start up this game. And what I mean is there is kind of like tutorial pop-ups. I don't think they do nearly as much good as possible. I didn't know you could pass gold between characters. I had to figure that out on my own, and it was a little bit convoluted to do it. I did figure it out. There's a lot of intuity to this, to the control scheme here, especially if you're playing on a mouse, because it's clicking things and seeing what that does. But it would have been nice to have a little bit more of a straightforward tutorial or more tutorial prompts when it came to some of the more minute things. The tutorial helps you with base combat, moving around, weather systems, chaos, stuff like that. But when it gets into like, how do I pass an item from one character to another, it gets a little bit more trickier, and I would have liked some help on that. My next con would be items on others in combat. So you can pass items between characters on the world map relatively easily, as long as you're within some like 2 or 3 hexes of each other. My biggest problem, though, is if you're in combat and one person has a healing herb and another person is wounded and doesn't have one, you can't use your healing herb on them, or if there is a way, I haven't found it. And that's a little annoying. I think that they should be able to use them if they're in combat together on other people. I mean, take one of my actions, I'm okay with that, but like, there should be a way to do it. That's just fair, in my opinion. And it's just a little bit silly. If I'm in battle and my buddy's going down, I'm not going to use the item on him. It is a little ridiculous. Alright, so whether or not I'm going to stick with it, yes, I really like this game. I'm really enjoying playing it. I'm going to continue to play it. I want to unlock more character classes and see what they do, find more weapons. Like I said, I've played 3 times right now. I have not beaten the first map. It's a little bit tougher than I expected, and I'm on the easiest difficulty. I'm starting to get it now. Now that I've realized that I shouldn't just rush through to the next objective, I should really focus on leveling on my character as I go. My characters, anyway. But just finding the new loot is wonderful, putting those into weird combinations with your characters. I've also really liked that, like, you can load out your squad any way you want in solo mode, so you don't have to take one of every character class. You can have 4 blacksmiths, which are your big brawly brutes, or you can have 4 mage scholars. It's all up to you and how you do it. And I would also argue that it is possible to run that, depending on the loot that you focus on and how you decide to do your battles. Right now I'm running 2 blacksmiths and 2 scholars, so I have no hunter or stable hand or herbalist or any of those, and it's working really well. So I think that's a really interesting system, which there are just some dynamic, interesting systems that are going to keep me coming back to this one, especially since it's a great time filler game. I can't even load up Baldur's Gate in the time it takes me to play 4 or 5 moves in this game. Baldur's Gate 3 is great. I'm not saying don't get it. I'm saying that, like, this is a great little time sink game that you can jump into anytime, and it has it's one of those that you look at it on the surface and think it's simple, and then you end up being pulled into the deep water of depth, and I'm really enjoying that. But that's it. Did I get it wrong? Did I get it right? You guys let me know in the comments below. I hope you guys are playing it. Tell me what you guys think. And you can also contact us on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. You can join our Discord, links in the description below. Influence us in all of our shows from there. As long as you keep watching, I'll keep making them. See you guys next time.